Welcome back to Let's Talk Dog podcast. My name is Bee. I'm the administrator and moderator and co-host for this podcast. These are the ladies of Let's Talk Dog.
What's up, dog freaks? It's Norca the Dog Guru from Central Florida.
Hi, it's Alexis, Vintage Dog Trainer in Missouri.
And we have a special guest today, guys. We have Mr. Vic from Divine Canine Training joining us for our podcast today. Mr. Vic, how are you?
Doing well, Norca. How are you guys?
Cold.
Cold.
Not cold.
You from Utah over there is not cold.
I'm from Wisconsin. I'm cold.
All right, well, welcome to Let's Talk Dog. We are going to ask you a bunch of questions that are probably slightly redundant, and some of them are silly, but that's all right. And you are welcome to ask us questions, interrupt us as needed, things like that. All right?
I'm into it.
All right, awesome. So we're going to start with, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started, what drew you to dog training, how long you've been doing it, things like that.
Okay, so I was in school to be a physical therapist at the University of North Carolina at Charlotte, here in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was in my junior semester, and I decided I don't really like what I'm doing here. So decided to kind of drop out of college at that point. And at the time I was living with my brother, who had just gotten a Newfoundland puppy. So my brother and his wife were at work pretty much all the time. They both worked retail. I was a college dropout, looking for a job. So I had a lot more time on my hands than they did. And their dog struggled with just normal behavioral stuff that the three of us see every day. Things like the dog was pulling on the leash and jumping on guests that would come over, and just pretty normal, basic stuff. And I was home, so I decided to do some research and kind of look into things that would hopefully work for the dog that I was dealing with. And I got lucky enough that the research that I did and the techniques that I tried did work. And I kind of had this little light bulb moment where it was just kind of crazy to me that I was kind of like a human talking to this dog, and the dog was listening and responding. So it was really kind of a crazy thing. And then that kind of spiraled into me working with their second dog. When they got a second dog, it was a Bernese Mountain Dog. Same sort of issues, same sort of techniques kind of worked. And then I rescued a dog we found in the parking lot. She was a mess, was very, very, very aggressive towards other animals, and was pretty bad resource guarder. I had no idea what I was doing, but I worked super hard, did a ton of research, and I happened to rehabilitate that dog too. And that's kind of when I decided that I really liked working with dogs. And that's when I decided to pursue a professional dog career at that point.
Okay. So you just kind of fell into it. It wasn't like an intentional turn.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely just fell into it.
Okay. That's awesome. Now, can you give us like the quick rundown? Like, people are going to see it in the description box, but I'm going to have you do it anyway. What is the name of your company? Where are you located? What is your service area? Do you offer online? Do you only do in person? Things like that.
Sure. So the name of my company is Divine Canine Dog Training. I'm located in Mooresville, North Carolina. I'm about, for those that don't know, I'm about 30 minutes north of Charlotte, North Carolina. I service pretty much the Lake Norman area, which consists of Troutman, Mooresville, Davidson, Cornelius, and Huntersville. I don't travel much further south than Huntersville and much further north than Troutman, but those are basically the surrounding cities that I service.
And do you specialize in everything? Is there something that you do more than others? What is your niche that you like to do?
The main things that my company works to fix are basic obedience and house manners. So we do a lot of behavior modification, things like, dogs not pulling on a leash, dogs not jumping on house guests, obedience like sit down, place. I typically don't. The only thing I really don't venture into is like the police canine world, bite work, narcotics detection, scent detection, things like that. But really anything obedience or behavior related is really what I do.
Okay, you want to ask
Yes.
some questions so
Yeah,
I'm not
come on.
monopolizing the entire conversation?
No, you're good. No, you're good. I mean, we kind of do the same thing. We kind of work the same dogs. You do board and train too, right?
Yeah, so my company offers basically two different programs. A program where we do private lessons. I meet with the client one-on-one, either in their home or somewhere in public, to work on what we're doing specifically with their dog during that lesson. And then I also have a board and train program, which typically runs about 3-ish weeks, depending on kind of the dog's issues and things like that. And then, of course, we do follow-up private lessons post board and train to make sure the client can keep up with everything I've taught the dog.
For you guys that don't know what a board and train program is, you leave your dog with a trainer and they stay in that trainer's home for whatever amount of time. So yeah, a lot of people are doing a board and train program. Do you get more private lessons or board and trains?
A good mix of both. My company is relatively small, so I typically don't take more than 4 or 5 dogs for board and train a month. So in terms of quantity, I probably do more lessons, but board and train is definitely kind of the service that really put me on the map in this area.
I think that's good. I agree. Trainers shouldn't have more than 5 dogs in their home at a time. There's can't give them all the attention they need. And I've definitely seen some trainers with 15, 16, 17 dogs training, and it's like, how? What's been the biggest challenge as far as being a balance trainer? Like, what's been your biggest challenge in your training journey with you being balanced?
Challenges.
I like to stump them, you know?
I just feel like I haven't had like a crazy amount of challenges.
You get any Karens telling you about your methods and your theories and what you do?
Not really. So I don't have a whole lot of challenges per se in terms of being balanced, because the vast majority of my clients come from word of mouth or referrals. I really don't do any kind of paid advertising, or I don't have a marketing program or anything like that, or a budget for advertising and marketing. Pretty much exclusively, I get clients from word of mouth or referrals or social media posts. So most people that are either calling me or emailing me already have kind of an idea of the way I do things. I'll even recommend people to kind of look into my social medias and get familiar with my work before we even schedule an evaluation. That way we don't have any discrepancies. I mean, the last thing I want is to set up an evaluation with a client and waste my time and waste their time because we disagree fundamentally on how things are going to get done. So normally through the social media process, I can really screen my clients. And like I said, most people that call my phone are getting my number from someone they trust anyway. So they're already familiar with the way I do things in my work.
Awesome. Love it.
So I'm going to
Anything
break
for-
this up real quick and ask a silly question.
Let's get weird.
What is your favorite breed to train and your favorite breed to own?
Are we allowed to have favorites as professionals?
Yeah.
We are.
Everyone's like, yeah, hell yeah.
I don't like huskies.
Huskies? No, they're not for me personally, but
I like training them. I just wouldn't own one.
I'm going to give you kind of a really boring answer, and then I'll give you kind of a better answer. So as kind of an obedience guy myself and a behavioral guy myself, I really like any dog that has any kind of motivation. So a dog that's willing to put in the work, a dog that's willing to work for some form of reinforcement is, in my opinion, a relatively easy dog to deal with versus a dog that doesn't find anything valuable, right? Dogs that are extremely nervous or anxious. Not that I dislike working with them. It's just not as easy versus, a dog that really wants the food or really values interaction or a toy or something like that. So I guess if to not give you such kind of a generalized answer, I would say, your working breeds. I really like dealing with labs and golden retrievers. I've gotten several really nice Rottweilers. I get Malinois pretty regularly. Dogs like I get pit bulls relatively often. Really any dog that I can motivate to want to do the work is what I would consider a pretty good starting point. If you want specific breeds, like I said, I would probably lean towards, Shepherds, Labs, Goldens, Malinois, Rottweilers, really any of your stereotypical like working breeds are what I would definitely favor.
Okay. And what is your least favorite breed to own and your least favorite breed to work? Not a general answer, an actual answer.
All right.
Mine are huskies.
Least
I
favorite
know,
breed to
Norca.
own. My least favorite breed to own, if I had to pick one, I probably would say a husky. Yep. They're super independent. They're noisy. The ones that a lot of the ones I've dealt with have been relatively dirty in their kennels. They're just not a super convenient dog in my opinion. So I would probably say huskies as well.
They're my favorite. Huskies and boxers are my favorite breed. I own
Hey.
both.
To each their own,
Doesn't
right?
make it personal. B knows that I don't like huskies. I like working them. I'll turn the shit
You
out
like
of a husky.
Sky.
Great to train. They're working dogs, but you couldn't pay me to own one. I would not rescue one. I wouldn't take a surrender. No, I do not want a free husky ever. And I will talk out the next person from getting one too.
Oh no, I will talk anybody out of getting a husky. I love them, but I love their unique personalities.
Sass? You're talking about the sass.
I do love
I don't
their
know.
sass.
I feel like after Sen, she's my shepherd. She's the noisiest, most vocal, independent dog I've ever met.
You would have so much
Oh.
fun with her. Vic,
Huskies
you
are
would have so
good.
much fun with her.
That's because Sen is like a 90-pound cat.
Sen
You
is
would have so much fun
Zen.
with Zen.
Sen is in her
That's the
kennel now.
big black. That's the big black shepherd
get
we saw
DNA on
climbing
her?
into her lap.
There's Malinois down that bloodline. I promise
There's
you.
no Mally in her.
In there,
Okay,
for sure.
so I've seen a lot of your obedience videos. Is that where your personal sports passion stuff lies? Because man, you do some clean obedience.
I really have a really, I would say, passion for high-end flashy obedience. I think it's not super easy to achieve. You get dogs like Malinois and German Shepherds who just genetically want to bite, and it's not obviously I'm not downplaying bite work. It's a thing I don't know a whole lot about, but a lot of those dogs will bite genetically, and they're pretty much they're already kind of on that path. But getting a dog to do things that the dog doesn't want to do naturally, I think is really, really cool. So when you see like transitions and focused healing on both sides and, kind of being able to manipulate the dog's position and do things that the dog doesn't really want to offer naturally, I think it's just a really, really cool thing.
Art. It really
I
is
love
art.
watching your obedience videos. That's why I want to go follow you around for a little bit.
If you guys don't have TikTok, you guys got to get TikTok. You guys have to follow Divine Canine? Or
Divine Canine Dog
Training.
on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.
Yep.
Yeah.
Me
He gives a
and
lot of free
Bleeker-
advice.
Me and Bleeker keep sending your videos back and forth, and we're like, one day Sen will do these things.
Take her to
And
Vic for a week.
She's fully convinced I can do it. I'm like, I don't think I can do this by myself.
Take her to
I
Vic for a week.
actually didn't even know who that was until a couple days ago. Did she tell you about that?
Mm-mm.
Oh, Bleeker? Bleeker's
So
awesome.
I was doing a live. I think this was what's today? Today's Sunday.
Friday, your e-collar one?
Yeah, yep. So it was Thursday night. I was doing a live with Mike from Cape Fear, and she happened just to jump in there, and she was like, "Oh, you're in Charlotte?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm close." And she's like, "Oh, I'm going to be there tomorrow." And I had no idea who this person was. Clicked on her page, saw she was relatively big, quote unquote, and then does a lot of dog stuff. So I was like, "Listen, if you're in the area and you want to meet up and work my dogs or stuff like that, you're more than welcome to." She ended up coming by for like an hour or two. Friday afternoon, and she got to work she worked Coco, which Coco is a pretty tough case, was a fear aggressive, big bicolor German Shepherd, had bite history, multiple bites on her record, and Bleeker got to come by and kind of work with her a little bit and see a little bit of how my process works. And that's kind of how I met her. So I met her Thursday night virtually, and then she came to my house Friday afternoon while she was in Charlotte.
Yeah, she does some good
Bleeker.
stuff.
She's wild. She's wild. I'll tell you that.
I love her. Yeah,
I
I
do
hang
too.
I
She's
hang out
fantastic.
hung out with her in St. Louis, and she's fucking great. she's She's fun. She's fun for sure. And she's good with her dogs too, so she's not afraid. I like that.
Oh yeah, she is
She
no.
can drink
I
beer.
don't. I think that lizard brain that most people have that tell you that something is possibly a danger doesn't actually work with her. I don't think she has the lizard brain.
Yeah, if she tells you it's a bad idea, it's a bad idea. Don't do it.
But all right, so
Definitely
what is?
Hi.
No, she's not shy. So I've seen some of the tricks that you've taught your dogs that are actually just tricks. What's your favorite thing you've ever taught a dog?
My favorite thing that he's taught his dog is pop launch. Launch.
So once again, kind of going back to the high-end obedience and the flashy stuff, I really put a giant emphasis on transitions. So I would say my favorite things that I teach my dogs are the transitions into different positions with me not moving. So the fact that I can stand still and I can get my dog to my left, get my dog to my right, get my dog between my legs, get my dog to do a sit front, and he will make up the difference in the position and the angles without me having to move or help him. I think is just a really incredible thing. But I'd probably say my dog's take a leak trick or his stick 'em up trick are pretty cool.
His dog takes a leak on command, guys. Well, he
Yeah,
doesn't.
his take a leak trick is my favorite. I cracked up the first time I saw it.
So for those that don't know what it is, everyone, I posted a video, but basically I can tell my dog to take a leak and he will fake pee, which basically just walk over to something and lift his leg on whatever it is. Doesn't actually pee. It's a very funny thing. It freaks people out. It's just a very unique trick, and my dog learned it in about 5 minutes. It was pretty crazy.
Forget
cracks
give
me
me
up
paw.
every
Go
time.
take a leak. Don't give me paw. Go take a leak.
What is the most common problem that you see in your area with dogs?
Most common problem I see is just overall reactivity, whether it's from overstimulation, over arousal, or whether it's from an anxiety or a fear-based standpoint. I deal with reactivity, on-leash reactivity, probably every day of my life.
It seems to be a pretty common answer that just kind of broadly swipes across most of the trainers we talk to is a lot of reactivity.
I think it has a lot to do with dogs are under socialized because of COVID, and people go socialize at the wrong places, dog parks and daycare. So dogs go there, run around freely with dogs, and then they're put on a leash and walk around the neighborhood. And there's a dog. Oh my God, I gotta bark my ass off to get to it. And it's and it comes off pretty gnarly in some dogs. They look fucking vicious when they're barking and they just want to run up and play. But they're being restrained by a leash. So, but I noticed more people are using daycares, more people are going to dog parks, and it's just.
I think just to kind of piggyback off what Norca said, I feel like there's a big misconception on what socializing or animal means nowadays. It's a lot of what I do. For those that are familiar with my work, know that I talk about engagement with the handler about every day of my life, to the point where people probably get sick of hearing it. But in my opinion, engagement with the handler, if you can get your dog to pay attention to you in different environments, you will fix and resolve or prevent so many bad behaviors. It's really kind of a prerequisite for everything I like to do. So, if you think about things like dog parks and daycares, like Norca mentioned, that's teaching the opposite of engagement, right? So the handler, the owner brings the dog somewhere, drops the dog off, the dog has a great time. And then whenever the owner gets out of work, the owner goes and picks the dog up and eliminates the dog from having fun. So it ends up kind of building this fun police title for lots of owners, or, especially obviously at a dog park, same thing happens, right? You go in, it's over arousal. The dog leaves the handler, goes and has a bunch of fun. And then the handler calls the dog back to remove the dog from that fun. So it's just really backwards, in my opinion, from what you should do realistically with your dog to really benefit and build that bond that you want with your dog.
All right.
What is your favorite curse word? What is your favorite curse word, Vic?
Favorite curse? Man, I got to just pick one.
Yeah, just one.
Just one.
I'm trying to think of all the times I say curse words and what's the most common. Probably fuck. I find myself saying what the fuck and stuff like that relatively often with dogs. Dogs do weird stuff. I'm like,
Yeah,
what
dude,
the
what
hell?
the fuck?
What the fuck? Yeah, like, what are you doing, kind of thing.
I say that multiple times a day, or that and what is wrong with you?
I say that pretty often.
So
Yeah.
we had Danny Wells on our podcast last week. And we were talking e-collar and stuff like that. How do you feel about this whole e-collar ban in the UK?
I think it's insane, to be honest with you. I deal with e-collars every day. I probably use e-collars almost every day. There's the amount of benefit that an e-collar can provide is insane. I really feel like it's politicized into something, because if you just look at the pros and cons, in my opinion, there's no reason this tool should ever be banned or even considered to be banned. The amount of help it provides dogs is astronomical. So I feel like it's a politicized thing. I feel like it's a tool just for division. People want to talk about banning e-collars, but they don't want to mention things like head halties,
Electric fences.
electric fences. There's all sorts of tools that are much more aversive to the dog that aren't even being brought
Collars.
up. Yeah, you think of like harnesses that go around the dog's muzzle, right? So now you exaggerate what a dog is doing, right? The dog takes off after a dog, and you're anchored to the dog by his neck, by his muzzle, and the net gets launched and twisted. I mean, there's just so many more tools that cause much more physical pain and discomfort than an e-collar, that I can't even really believe that this tool is even under the microscope.
Agreed. I said, and again, it's people that have never touched the tool and used it properly that are trying to fight this or make this ban. It makes no sense. I just can't. The science out there. People want science. Let's go. We got science experiments. Let's go.
I mentioned in one of my lives today, someone asked about like a study or some kind of survey, and I was like, look, I don't put a whole lot of thought into things like that, because realistically, you could do as many surveys as you want until you manipulate the results to prove what you're trying to prove. You could ask 100 people at Petco how they feel about e-collars, and then if you ask 100 people in the dog sport world, you're going to get two completely different answers for your experiment. So results for your experiment. So, I feel like studies and things like that can be extremely biased and things like that. So I go off of experience. I've been dealing with e-collars for over a decade. The benefit they bring, just greatly outweighs any form of negative possible, any sort of bad, so to speak. Right. That it's just crazy to me. I do seminars occasionally for rescue groups and things like that. And rescue groups are really big on all positive, training with food, and no pinch collar, no e-collar. Don't want to use anything like that. And I kind of try to make it a point to mention that, like, it's crazy to me that I even have to convince you to even think about using this tool. Like, the amount of benefit the amount of the advantages that I can bring to the table with that tool for lots of rescue dogs is just, it's overwhelming. And the fact that people just disregard it so quickly, to me, I kind of find it wild, especially with no experience. They jump on Google and they Google, how can I fix this? And everybody says, whatever you do, don't use an e-collar. And it's just people with no experience that are just putting their opinions out there. And honestly, their opinions don't have any real value because they've never done it. They're not in the field,
And if anything, they're probably affecting other dogs from actually being helped. I got something. If there's one piece of advice that you would just have every client kind of walk out of your facility with, what would it be, or what is it? Like one piece of advice that every single client gets from you.
I would say put a giant emphasis on engagement, right? Have fun with your dog. I see way too many videos on the internet of dogs doing obedience, and the dogs look like they don't want to be in their routine, right? It's really hard. It's really hard to get lifelong results with your dog if you're having to convince your dog to act that way, right? You have to talk your dog into it every day. It's a really difficult thing to achieve. If you can put a giant emphasis on utilizing play and obedience and making the routine super fun, you don't have to convince your dog to perform good behaviors if there's big value built on those behaviors.
They're
So
just gonna want to do it.
they want to do it, and that's like when people see me work my dog and they see me work my client dogs and their heads are always high, their tails are always wagging. That's because there's so much value into those good behaviors that I don't have to convince the dog to do those things. So I would definitely say that I put a big emphasis on having fun with your dog, listening and making obedience fun for your dog. I think is a super, super important concept.
Finding what your dog likes, because not all dogs want food, not all dogs want toys, not all dogs like praise. So you really got to find what works for your dog.
Yeah.
100%.
B should
All
know
of
she
my
has
dogs
5
are
dogs in her
different.
house, and they're very different. Very different.
Yep,
So,
I
such
have a boxer who loves trick training. I have a boxer who likes regular training. I have a husky who would prefer to not have to do a thing, except chase down small animals and eat them. I have a bully who, if there's food involved, will cheerfully give you anything, including her own liver. And I have a boxer mix who's the same. Like they're, and all 5 of them have very vastly different personalities and like different aspects of training. So that was a big eye opener for me because like Sky is not a real big fan of having to do obedience. She doesn't love it. But 11 loves it so much, and he's so fixated when he's doing it that it's like he looks very tense, but he's waiting for the next thing. He wants to know what the next thing is, and it's very weird.
Awesome when you understand the dog in front of you.
Yep. What is something that you would give, what kind of advice would you give young and upcoming trainers?
So I have an apprentice right now, and with her, I put a really big emphasis on beginning to get mechanically good at training dogs, right? There's lots of people who can lure a dog and things like that and put the dog in positions, but being mechanically good, in my opinion, is a really big deal. So what I mean by that is understanding the difference between physicals and verbals, knowing when to add a verbal, knowing how to phase your physicals out, how you handle your leash. It's really the small things, right? And in my opinion, if you can get really good at the small things, then the rest of the stuff becomes much more simple, right? So if you take time and you learn the fundamentals of dog training and you understand mechanically kind of what you're supposed to be doing and you put an emphasis on those mechanics, I think the rest will really start to fall in place just as experience starts to build.
So don't rush, guys. Don't rush
Don't rush.
the process.
My apprentice the other day, we were working with a lab and we were doing just heel sits, which is as you're walking, you come to a stop, the dog sits automatically. And at that point, you can either chain that sit with another heel command, or you can make the dog hold the sit. And, she was doing 5, 6, 7 sits and she wasn't really making any progress every sit. And I'm like, look, you need to move a little faster. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, look, and I showed her. And then within like 2 sits, I was like walking 30 feet away from the dog. And afterwards, she was like, she told one of her friends, she was like, man, privately, she told them this, and we talked about it after. She was like, I just want to be as efficient as Vic is. And her friend was like, look, you've been training dogs for 30 days, right? Like the efficiency is going to take time, right? But if you take time and you don't rush it, you'll get to that point. I kind of pride myself on being relatively efficient and doing things the right way. So it doesn't take me 50 reps to teach a behavior. But just like Norca said, take your time, right? Learn things the proper way, and the rest will fall in place if you have a good foundation set.
Good advice. You guys have questions?
No, nothing.
Alexa, what are you going to teach your dog that my dog does? What's next?
How to not be a psycho.
My dogs are both psycho.
How to channel the psycho into an appropriate level of.
Tame the psycho.
What kind of dog do you have?
So I've got a working line German Shepherd, and then I have a German Shepherd Mallee mix. He's my rescue mutt. He's easy. He doesn't think very much, but he's happy to do anything. My Shepherd, super, super independent, uses her brain way too much, and is either 0 or 100 at all times. And she's been doing quite well at just chilling in the new house and staying on place really well. And then apparently hormones have gone crazy in the last like 24 hours, and she can't handle not touching me right now. So she's either in the kennel or like glued to me.
Needy.
Super needy. Yeah. I actually was trying to do the mental work to think of even how to start working on it. Because I've watched a couple of your lives the last couple of days. And you've been talking about kind of all of your cues being kind of a continuous behavior until told to stop, which is already in place for me with sits and downs in place and things like that. But I'm trying to do the mental homework of figuring out like, how do I turn that into like, she has a bark on command cue, but she won't keep it going. And so that was my yesterday's project, was attempting to try and start building that longer. It didn't go very well.
The blouse.
It didn't go very well.
Lots of times, are you talking about like just for like speak basically, right? Or whatever your bark on command cue is?
Basically.
So if you give her the cue, she barks once?
She'll bark once, sometimes twice, and then just stops and stares at me.
Yeah, frustrate her a little more.
So I saw a pretty cool video. I wish I could take credit for this video, but it was a guy, I think his tag is, just to give him some credit, it's like Al the dog trainer, I think, on TikTok. But he showed how he teaches it. And basically he there was a fence, like a split rail fence with like, the metal panels up for, just like cattle or whatever. And he took his flirt pole. So him and his dog were on one side of the fence, and put the flirt pole on the other side of the fence, and was teasing the dog through the fence with the flirt pole, and the dog just started barking. And then obviously you would just mark with yes and pull the flirt pole back on your side of the fence whenever the dog gave you X amount of barks, right? So, one of the important things is when you're asking for that longer, like more repetitions or longer duration, mark randomly, right? So don't mark one bark and then two barks and then three barks. Mark one bark and then three barks and then one bark and then two and then one and then five, right? And just keep making it random. It's the same thing. Like it probably will be easier if you start with an easier position. Maybe like if you start with like your weaves. So instead of asking the dog to weave and doing one rotation, you can mark and reward the dog just starting the weave and then doing a half of a rotation and then two rotations and then a half a rotation. So you'll just randomize when you mark and reward based off of however many rotations or barks the dog is giving you. And I think you'll have a little bit more success at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, usually a barrier will definitely get that mark going. If it doesn't.
Yeah, like she was definitely like, by the end of it, she was frustrated enough that like teeth were showing with the bark, and she was like, I hate you right now. But was starting no, and she was starting to keep up the bark, and then we took a little bit of a break, and then like training session number 2, it was out the window, and it was back to kind of like one bark, and then she's like, cool, that was right. And I'm like, not quite, let's so it's
you probably have to shorten up where you're marking, because you're probably taking too long to mark the bark. So maybe you're expecting her to keep going, and then you're not really marking those first couple that she does. So
mostly, usually as soon as you mark, she's like, cool, we're done. So as soon as I mark it, she's like, okay.
So your yes to her is her release.
Yeah, so as soon as I say yes, she's like,
fuck yeah,
I did the thing, let me bite the thing now. Because the biggest frustrator for her right now is getting to bite when she's done with it.
Another thing too is just be patient, right? So if you tell her if she only barks once, just wait. Yep. See if she'll offer you a second bark, and if she does, you mark that.
Yeah.
And then kind of build off of that too. There's lots of people that I actually just put a video up, pretty cool video of me working with my Malinois when he was a puppy, doing some healing on a touchpad. And lots of times if you're just patient, the dog will give you what you want, right? You just have to let the dog think and process, right? So lots of times just waiting and, not repeating the command and not doing anything physically. If you just simply just wait, lots of times your dog will say, shit, barking worked a minute ago. Let me try to just bark again. And then if the dog offers the behavior again, then of course you pay that. And then you go back to paying every bark. And then you wait again, see if she'll bark twice. And you can just kind of build off of that.
Yeah. I definitely need to spend a little bit of time kind of trying to figure out how to clarify it for her as well, because she very much will throw other behaviors at the same time as bark. So she'll combine like her sit and her down and stand with bark. And then, so I'm thinking I'm probably not being clear with something where she's not sure if the yes is for the down or for the bark, because she does it at the same time.
Yeah, you got to be careful with that. So like with my dog Perry, his reverse command, he always rears up and barks and then backs up every time, because when he was a puppy, I didn't pay attention to what I was marking. And so now he thinks reverse means jump, bark, and then actually move backwards. So I did that same thing with my Malinois puppy. I would tell him abois, which is his bark command in French. And at first he would lay down and then he would sit. And then eventually once he started barking, when you solidify it and you only pay when the dog just barks versus doing the position changes, it'll become more clear to your dog.
Okay. That helps a lot to know to just kind of wait it out through the position changes.
Yeah. So my recommendation would be don't mark if she's position changing and barking. Wait till she's kind of standing and barking, because honest to God, it does not take many reps for the dog to learn that speak means lay down and bark.
And actually, a lot of you guys might see that with your dog when you give them a treat and they look at the floor for another one, even when you don't drop it, because you guys condition your dogs that when you give them a treat, you probably drop them. So they got to look around for it. I don't know if you guys seen that. You give a dog a treat, and it's like, where'd the other one go?
11, 100%. That is one of the things I did with 11. And so
because you were letting him make the treat. So
yeah,
it's just marking, and it happens. The conditioning process kind of just works,
Yeah, I got to clarify what sit just the verbal sit with Gambit, because right now he knows hand positions are the easiest things for him to process. So he processes those really quickly. But verbals are a little harder for him because he's a 10-month-old boxer, and let's be honest, they're not the brightest breed. And so every time that I give him the sit command, he sits and then automatically lays down. And so I constantly have to correct it. And I know that it's because I was not clear when I first taught it to him.
So I would almost guarantee you, B, if you sent me a video of working your dog sits, I would almost guarantee that there's a mix up in your mechanics of verbals and physical. That's what I was talking about earlier, where meaning if your hand signal, so when you mentioned your dog is easier, your dog learns easier with physicals and verbals, every dog learns easier with physicals and verbals. Every dog in the world, right? Physicals always trump verbals. That's how dogs don't understand language, right? So lots of times what happens, the reason why verbals take longer is because you have to understand mechanics for that to work, right? So if you're starting your lure while you're saying sit, the dog will always follow this first, right? So lots of times I meet with clients and I'm like, hey, show me what you've taught your dog. And they say, okay, sitting down and shake and whatever else. And I say, okay, show me. And, most of them say, sit. And then they do all this stuff, to get the dog to sit. And then they do, and they point to the ground. And almost every time their lure always happens before they tell the dog to down. So what happens in that case is now I say, okay, stand up straight, cross your arms, tell your dog to down. And the dog won't do it, right? Because the verbal always takes a back seat to your physical. Right. So I would encourage you, B, to work on your physical first. So do your lure, right? And once your dog is
When
sitting,
he's got this is sit, either this or this is sit, and he knows that this is sit. I don't have to say anything. I just do this and then he'll sit.
okay.
And he knows that this or this is down.
Okay.
And he knows that without any verbals. He knows the verbal for down. He gets the verbals for down and sit are the two that he gets mixed up.
You gotta separate them, that's all.
Yeah.
So I would still encourage you to take a step back and say, and does your dog understand leash pressure?
Yeah, he does. He's not great at it because I don't work on leash pressure a ton, but he understands the basics.
So so my point with mechanics is you need to say sit before you're doing your lure, right? So you have to basically sit still and then say sit and then do your lure. And then you mark and pay. Sit, add your lure, mark and pay. If you're doing this, sit, it's going to take a ton of repetitions for your dog to learn your verbals, right? So once you have the ability to physically put him in the position, whether it's with a lure, food lure, or leash pressure, when you're adding your verbals, make sure your verbal always comes before your lure, right? And that's where I see a lot of trainers really have a little bit of a mix up, right? You know, the dog will place if you start guiding him there, but you can't send him to the place because you start guiding him before you tell him place, right? So the dog doesn't really learn the verbals because the physicals always trump the verbals, right? Or if it is just a mix up and the dog is just being goofy, just block him with a leash from laying down when you tell him sit, right? So now you have a leash and then you're going to go sit, add your cue, dog sits. If he lays down, he sits, mark and pay. It'll probably, if it is just a mix up, it's going to take you 3 minutes to fix. If it's a mechanical issue, it'll take you a day. Won't take you very long.
We've been working on it.
We'll test it out
but I
this
will-
evening.
I will, because I have to train them after I make dinner.
So I would encourage you, so grab food, make sure the dog's engaged, right? But grab your food and cross your arms and tell your dog to do things that you think your dog understands. And that I almost promise you, it'll humble you very, very quick, right? You'll
Well, I'm
see
already
how
pretty
much,
humble, so that's not great.
well, I'm just,
And you can try to jump up and down and tell your dog the command.
I can do that with 11. I can do that. I can jump up and down and tell 11 to sit, and his butt hits the ground. He stares at me like, "Where's my food?"
you'll see how reliant that we are as people on even moving body. You know how many times I'm looking at like high-end healing and the person will shrug their shoulders a little bit to get the dog into the heel position to fix where the dog's lining up. But if you stand perfectly still, the dog is all cockeyed, right? So even just with shrugging, even with looking at the dog, hand signals, all that physical always trumps verbal. So I would encourage you to stand up straight, cross your arms, and give your dogs commands and see what your dog really knows with verbal clarity.
I'll send you a video on Instagram.
Yeah, tag me in it. Let me know.
Tag me too, please.
I will. What do you think the future holds for both yourself and Divine Canine Training?
I'm super excited about the future for myself and for my company. I have an apprentice right now that I think does a really, really excellent job. I'm really excited to kind of get her hired in and start getting her some hands-on work with some dogs. I really like the idea of like this apprenticeship program. So I think I'm going to put some more effort into getting apprentices and things like that. I really like teaching people about dog training. And I think that obviously I'm biased, right? But I think the way I do things is the right way to do things. So I think I offer a lot to a relatively new or even green trainer. I like kind of being able to mold people into what I consider a good trainer to be. That's also why I would rather hire somebody or have somebody apprentice that has little to no experience than hire somebody who's been training dogs under somebody else for X amount of months or years, just because I feel like I do things a little bit differently. So I would rather teach someone my way than try to break their old habits that I don't agree with. Because at the end of the day, you know, my brand's on that dog. So I want to make sure that dog is up to my standards. But I'm super excited. You know, I think my kind of my 5-year goal is to have a big facility somewhere. You know, I think that's really the next step for me. Just kind of continue doing what I'm doing and solve that puzzle. The puzzle of producing the same results, but on a bigger level, right? Instead of 4, 5, 6 board and trains a month, how can I crank out 8, 10, 12, 15 board and trains a month without sacrificing quality? And I think that's going to come from the team that I hire and making sure that my trainers are good and treating them as essentially as partners versus just employees and really just cranking out dogs and keeping quality really high, even as we raise up quantity. You know, I've got friends that are dog trainers locally to me, and they run into, actually a good friend of mine just messaged me the other day and said she fired her trainer because the training he was being lazy. He wasn't putting the dogs out the way he was supposed to. And, you know, she really feels that her brain is going to take a hit if he continues. So that scares me, of course. That's also why I've been super conservative about hiring people on. And I've been really conservative about growing my brand and my company because I don't want to sacrifice quality for quantity. So I think realistically in 5 years, I think I plan to have 4 or 5 new trainers under me, and we're going to start putting out just as nice of dogs, but more of them every month.
So where can I apply for this position?
Send me an email, Norco. We'll
You
work
have
it
some
out.
references of mine, don't you? No.
I'm
No, I
familiar
think
with
that's
your
great. And I think that's a big issue with a lot of big name brand dog training companies. Like they got too big, too fast, and they hire just anybody, put them through a month training, and then they're professional dog trainers. The kind of dogs that I take, I would never put a person under like a year or 2 of experience with. Like, no, you can't hold a leash, you can't hold his dog. Like, sorry. So, I mean, I think that's one thing. Like,
issue too in this industry is what defines experience. You know, I see lots of times on videos on social media or people's live videos on social media, it'll be a 25-year-old, you know, person that says, I've got 20 years of experience training dogs. And I'm like, look, you know, the dog you grew up with throwing the ball for him in the backyard when you were a toddler doesn't count as professional dog training experience, right? So
your own personal dog that you train all the time doesn't count either.
Right.
right.
I was so hoping I
Yeah.
could use that I've had a dog my entire life. It's 40 years
No.
of training experience.
No, like just because you own a dog, that doesn't give you experience with dogs, guys. It's so different. It's like you have a child, but you can handle every child. No, you can't. Like, no.
It's a big jump when you cross over into doing anything professionally, you know, in terms of your efficiency. Obviously, it's much easier to teach your personal dog that you've known for X amount of months or years and you have an established relationship with. It's much easier to teach them things than it is a dog that wants something to do with you, that just gets dropped off. And, you know, you have to learn the dog and build a rapport with the dog. So, you know, professional training, I think the experience needs to be addressed. And like me, myself, I mean, I consider my professional experience when I first started getting paid to work with people's dogs, not the first time I interacted with a dog when I was a little kid.
I pet a dog when I was 7. Like I pet a dog.
I've seen dogs before, so I'm a behaviorist.
Oh yeah.
That was a
And that's
joke,
the
by the
thing-
way, for people
That's the thing,
listening.
like
That was a joke.
in this field, like a lot of people are really concerned about certificates and the documentation and paperwork for these trainers, but a lot of these trainers that have all these certificates are online, never in person, don't have actual hands-on experience with half of the dogs they're talking about. And then they don't take difficult cases. So
It's not a bad thing to not take difficult cases. Like for the first 5 years I'm training, I will probably only be taking puppies.
and that's fine.
Like,
And that's fine. That's your
that's
field.
fine.
That's your field.
Huh?
But I wouldn't go say, put that treat down, go put a prong collar on that puppy. Like
No.
Like it's a
I
puppy
love working
training,
with
it's puppy
puppies.
training.
Like 6 weeks to like 6 months is my favorite age in dogs. I love
Because
it.
behavior modification is not for everyone. It's just,
Yeah.
it's just
Can I see the little tiny fluffy dog that you have back there? I really
Where's
want to
Poppy?
see your fluffy dog.
puppy lunch. Where's Pop? Where's Pop at?
Oh, that's JoJo.
Where's Jojo? No, get Pop.
No, not Jojo, the little fluff, the little teensy fluff I saw floating around back there.
Pop, Pop,
Oh, did he come back here for a second? Pop,
Pop lunch. Lunch.
come here, Pop. Come here, buddy. There he is.
Pop, Pop.
That's
Oh my
little guy.
God, he's so cute.
My little guy. Hi, buddy.
Yeah,
This is our little rescue dog. He's 2 years old.
he's 2. I
He's
thought he was like 8
adorable.
or 9.
He
No,
looks like
he's-
Joey.
He does. Ugly.
No, Joey's cute too.
Ugly. No, he's cute. What is he? A Morkie?
No, he is. We did like one of the doggy DNA tests. He is 25% poodle, 25% Chihuahua, That's 50%. Then he's 12.5% Shih Tzu, 12.5% Boxer, which is 75%. And then 25%, it just says mutt.
Does he
They don't,
does he have an underbite?
oh yeah,
Ah, great.
pretty bad underbite.
B came in B came in with Sky, and I'm like, but this dog has bully in her, bulldog something, because she's got the worst
I,
under.
so I got her from a shelter. She's half husky, and like she is all husky personality, and you can tell. But she's also half, they told me, German Shepherd. And then I DNA tested her, and she is 50% husky, and she is 50% American Pit Bull Terrier, Staffordshire Terrier, 4% English Bulldog, and like 6% Boxer.
You see this dog's grill, you know she's got bulldog in there somewhere.
She's got
every
underbite. It's
time-
the cutest though.
Every time I hear you guys talk about your DNA test, I still feel gypped about mine.
Why?
I was expecting some weird random thing to be in there. Nah, 55% Allie, 45% German Shepherd.
No, he
That's
he looks-
100%
he looks
white-tailed
German
deer.
Shepherd now. The one I'm questioning is Sen. Sen has to have some Malinois in there. Like, you look at her and you're like,
Look,
crackhead.
Sen is 100% purebred Velociraptor.
Oh yeah.
He
All right, guys,
totally is.
Anybody else have
We're gonna
questions?
get, yeah. Do you have any
Vic?
questions for us, Vic?
When are you coming to see me, B?
Yeah, B, when are we
April?
gonna go see Vic?
Oh, you're coming too, Nora?
We're,
Hell
we're
yeah.
a team. We're a team.
Norca really wants to. I'm taking like 3 weeks to go to North Carolina. So
I'll take
if you
one.
want to come with me,
Come on, pick me
you're
up
gonna
on
have
the
to
way.
fly out.
Yeah, look, vintage is coming. We're there. So
Even a
I just need a
They
week.
all think that I have tons of room in my bus, and I don't.
I don't
'cause
need to
there's
go on
2
your bus. I have
crates.
my own truck. I just need to know when, where.
Okay, I can do that. But yeah, I'm gonna come see you in April.
I'm gonna come see you in
And,
April too, Vic.
You can meet
Yep.
my absolute terror of a boxer, and then my criminal puppy boxer.
It was
He's a
early
criminal.
April, like early to
Yeah,
mid.
it's like the 7th to like the 21st or something. I don't know. I have to look. I'll send you a Google Calendar from my work email that says the
I
dates
might
that
be
I'll be
coming.
in North Carolina.
That's fine. Just my birthday's at the end of April, and usually Paige plans something wild that I don't
Oh,
know
I'll
anything.
be cleared out. I'll be cleared out at the end of April because Mike's going to some seminar thing where it's cold.
Okay. Oh yeah, I think he's Virginia or something. He's going up in the mountains or something, didn't he?
Yeah,
Something like that.
I informed him that I was coming out to come follow him around. That's what he gets for being friends with me.
I definitely want to come meet you too. So I'll plan some.
I do it to
maybe around
Norca
the time-
too. I
Maybe
just tell
it's
her when
around
I'm
the time
driving
he
to Florida.
I'll put you guys to work.
I'm down. I'm down for it. I'll
Okay.
let you have at handling 11. He'll shake and be terrified of you.
Oh man, poor.
Oh, I got attacked by a cat. Did I tell you guys? Fuck cats. Alexis,
Oh,
I got-
Norca learned the hard way that you're supposed to scruff a cat, not just pick it up.
You betcha.
Oh, I
Clawed
didn't
the
even pet him. This was from me petting him. I got like he like tore my wrist up. I could see my tendon. Like
Puncture
Oh,
bites.
he just like
Yeah.
held on for dear. I've never gotten bit by a dog that way. Like dogs bite and go. You know, it's just like get away. You know, and it's I've had dogs like rush at me with muzzles on, but not a grab and hold and bite and attack and wrap yourself around and then and jump off. Like that's
Did you not learn
traumatized.
sitting around my cat?
He's traumatized.
yeah, they're evil.
Do I need to
Keep
come
going,
out and
then.
train a cat?
You gotta come out and train a cat.
Okay, that's
All
really
right.
good.
Well, let's go ahead and wrap up then, so Norca can head out to finish helping her friend, and we don't keep Vic too long. We will make sure that down below in the information box we have Vic's information and his socials. You can find Let's Talk Dog Podcast on TikTok and Instagram, and I think we have a Facebook, but I can't remember. And it's all Let's Talk Dog Podcast. We also have a website, which is letstalkdogpodcast.com. And if you would like to support us by buying merch, let us know so I can continue finding ways to make it. And thank you so much, Vic, for coming on our podcast. We appreciate it. It's been fun. So
Just
thank
swallow
you,
that.
everybody. And have a
Of
good
course,
night.
listen, the three of you guys, I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity. Anytime that I have the opportunity to spread some education or awareness or shit, even entertainment, I usually jump at the bit. So I appreciate you guys having me on and look forward to meeting all you guys.
Love you, Vic.
Have a
We'll
great
see you
day.
later, Vic. You better be on live tonight, man. I'm gonna stalk you.